Welcome back to a new season of Too Much Future. This is episode 37, not of the new season, but in a general sense. And I'm Cameron.
I'm Michael.
You know, this is interesting. This is the second time we're recording this, and there was a different character who showed up the last time we recorded this. Let me throw this up to you one more time. I'm Cameron.
Howdy, partner. I'm Michael.
Well, it's Cowboy Michael.
Cowboy Michael. He's here to say hello.
Does Cowboy Michael have different political opinions than regular Michael? Is he like a single issue voter?
Yeah, it's only the politicians who are going to let people grow up to be cowboys.
Because, well, we know that mamas,
Uh-huh.
they are strongly advised not to let their children grow up to be cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
And Cowboy Michael is really in favor of that.
Cowboy Michael, implicitly anti-mom.
But pro-freedom, really. So hard to know, if Cowboy Michael's a good guy or a bad guy. Very, ambiguous in the neo-Western tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Clint Eastwood, eat your heart out. Cowboy Michael's in town.
Right. Like, we have no more need for Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's just true across the board. But this is not a show where we go for the throat of Cormac McCarthy. This is a show where we play through the Fallout games. I was about to say in publication order. I guess that's still true.
I guess it is.
It is. We've done Fallout 1. We've done Fallout 2. We've done Fallout 3. And now we are starting with this very episode, Fallout New Vegas.
Woo!
Woo! This is a game that has a lot of... culture behind it. What a phrase, what a thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
It is a game that people have a lot of love for. They got a lot of maybe nostalgia, but it's a well-respected game, I think, in a broad sense, because of the way it's written, the way that it's kind of mapped and pathed. Maybe we can talk a little bit about how we've attempted to map our way through this game somewhere in this episode. And generally kind of gets praised before Fallout 3 would, right? When people are talking about the best Fallout games, I think that in a broad sense, New Vegas gets brought up as, kind of apex, throwing back to Fallout 1, Fallout 2, more than it is Fallout 3. And there's a lot of love for it for that reason. I don't know. Do you want to say a little bit about the development of this game or what came out about it? Have you done any research on this?
I mean, I've done some research, but I wasn't going to, trot it all out here at the beginning. I was probably going to reserve it for when it's more recent or like more relevant. But, some things sort of off the top, right, is that there was originally another Fallout 3, Van Buren, that got scrapped, and a lot of elements from that end up showing up here. So that's something that we'll probably talk about whenever it is, again, more relevant. And of course, people who worked on the original Fallout games were working on this one, which was maybe not true with Fallout 3. I don't want to make a blanket statement, but I don't think that there was anyone at Bethesda who had been working on 1 or 2. And of course, this has Josh Sawyer as the director, and another topic that we will discuss when we get to it, Chris Avallone writing the DLC later at the end of the game.
Yeah, lots of people. So this is developed by Obsidian, and Obsidian is basically built from the corpse of Black Isle, for lack of a better word, right? So lots of, as you're saying, lots of continuity between people. I don't know exactly the raw number of people, but a lot of continuity, and certainly kind of a studio ethic continuity between the developers of Fallout 1 and 2. And then New Vegas here. So this game often gets talked about as a kind of return to form for Fallout, or kind of a throwback to what Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 were up to. And we're going to determine if we think that's true or not. I think it's impossible, if you're in the kind of Fallout space of thinking about this, it's kind of impossible to engage with this game without at least entertaining some of those questions. Although it's probably just not fair to the game. It's its own thing.
Very much so, I would say.
Yeah. Well, this has got an intro cinematic, like these games do. What do you think about that, Michael?
I really like this intro cinematic, actually. I mean, I say that as if I have like criticized these extensively in previous seasons, which I have not. But
Hmm.
this one I like because of the economy of it. How it
Hmm.
is very careful to signal for you every kind of relevant faction. And then sort of the way that it establishes space is really awesome in that we start with like the poster that's like Happy New Year 2025. So, just 4 more years. With
They
some
love the new year. Sorry, I got to jump in here. Video games in like 2007 to 2010 love the new year.
Well, I mean, and this is the other thing that's fascinating about this game that we will talk about when it's relevant is that in the previous season in Fallout 3, I was talking about how how Fallout 3 is very clearly responding to like what BioShock had done in
Hmm.
kind of like games of that era, right? The kind of innovations or sort of like the changes in presentation that BioShock had made very mainstream or like very popular. And the weird thing about that is that BioShock itself was referencing Fallout and Fallout 2 in a lot of its kind of Art Deco aesthetic and kind of the weird little cartoons that you would get when you saw when you got a new plasmid and it showed you how to use them and things like that. And so
Yeah.
now we're kind of like full circle in New Vegas, where we have a New Year's Eve, a sort of like ruined New Year's Eve poster in this desolate, glamorous casino that is run by a reclusive, mysterious industrialist, right?
Hmm.
So I don't just weird stuff all over, I guess.
Yeah, for me, that always kind of demonstrates or pushes toward, especially if you read things like postmortems or if you read dev interviews, really from this time, you can really feel it. In the blockbuster, kind of AAA game space, there's a lot of checking out what the other person is doing, right? There's a lot of teams from sometimes disparate genres. uh, it's very clear that they're being pushed, right, and innovating in a very particular kind of aesthetic space. I don't know. There's something really interesting that the games industry at this time was at the cusp of like a rapid explosion, right? I mean, this is right at the edge of the beginning of mobile games, or maybe even a little bit into that. Certainly into the era of Facebook and casual games, or about to be where that explosion is, and that radically increases the size of the games industry. Indie games come out of that too. I mean, not from that direct thing, but kind of in that moment. And so this is kind of this last kernel moment. It almost feels like where the top 10 video games of the year all kind of have similar vibes,
Mhm.
in particular ways. But sorry to detract from the thing. So we start here from the poster. We're zooming out. Blue Moon is playing,
Mhm.
very different from the ink spots.
Very much so, and
Hmm.
we've got the casino at first looks like it might be okay, but then as you pull further back, you see that there are like chairs tipped over and there's no one here, and it's kind of eerie. And then it keeps sort of like pulling back, and then we're outside, we're on the strip. It's kind of this weird, post-apocalyptic kind of strip, and there are people walking around not doing post-apocalypse things, right? Doing Vegas things in post-apocalyptic Vegas.
Hmm.
There's like obviously like drunk soldiers like waving some sort of flag, and that's the new California Republic flag. If you are familiar with the Fallout franchise, you clock that immediately. Um, and we get a brief shot of like a strange robot that sort of zips by, and those are going to become relevant. And then we have the walls around New Vegas itself with a sniper perched shooting a raider, and we keep sort of moving outward, right? Like it's the direction of this sequence is all kind of a single pull back.
Hmm.
um and so we start with the New Vegas itself, with the strip, move back outside of New Vegas, and we see kind of the exterior where, things are dangerous, where people are going to get shot. Pull back even further, and we've got this other strange flag with a bull on it and some sort of scout looking down at New Vegas in the distance. And there's some sort of signal given, and we see more soldiers, right, in strange armor kind of marching by. And we pull back even further, and now suddenly we see some raider looking guys, and then one dude in a very snazzy checkered overshirt sports jacket, um in
My
a kind
wedding
of rural.
overshirt.
Yes. Uh, in a graveyard, digging a shallow grave with someone bound and hooded next to them, which of course plays into kind of like the whole Vegas mobster gonna go out and leave you in the desert kind of thing. And so very, very quickly, this cinematic establishes like the location and all of the major factions in quick order, and it's also probably the most like populated cinematic that the games have had so this far, I think.
Oh yeah, by far, right? You
Hmm.
know, the all these other games have been basically pitching us in the intro cinematic, at least, like the world is desolate, right? There are only a few people, and that's maybe, well, I mean, I guess that's something we kind of figure out when we're reading the Fallout Bible, right? Is that was never really that true. You know,
Hmm.
there were always a fairly large number of people almost immediately after the bombs dropped who were like doing stuff, and this feels like the kind of culmination of the Fallout Bible. You know, we've talked a few times about the Fallout Bible kind of getting written into the canon or becoming more canonical as time goes on. And this feels like one of those moments where it's like, yeah, we're, you know, X number of years after the bombs have dropped, and there's a whole bunch of people who are part of a whole bunch of factions, and they are running around doing their own thing. And I think it does a really good job too of demonstrating to you, as you're saying, right, that this world is populous, and you're going to have to deal with all these people. Like you're going to have to figure out how
Hmm.
you are fitting into this big kind of schematic. A way that you've put it, I think maybe this was on Discord or something like that, as we were getting ready for this, but. You know, you said something to the effect of this game is refreshing because it feels like you come into the world that has like its own thing going on.
Hmm.
Whereas all the, you know, certainly Fallout 3 is like the world is in stasis functionally, like
Hmm.
outside, and you as this kind of heroic changer, right? The wanderer. You are going to wander into situations, and that's going to kind of trigger them to begin, right? Like the Enclave and everything involved in that is really only happening because of the sequence of events that set in motion with your father and you and all the kind of water stuff, right?
Hmm.
So, you know, it's almost like the world is waiting for you to show up. The demonstration here in this intro is the world is not waiting for you to show up.
Hmm.
It's there's stuff happening.
Yeah, yeah. The world is happening. It is not waiting for you to step outside and begin your hero's journey.
Hmm. And I
Yeah.
think we're going to feel that too in a pretty significant way. The intro cinematic too, or the not the, you know, it's always really weird, I guess. So all these games have an intro cinematic, and then they have the narration
Hmm.
that Ron Perlman does.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to read it. You just stop me, because I think we've done a good job so far of reading about war never changes. Some people don't like the way that we interpret these. That's okay. That's fine. But I'm going to read it. You just stop me whenever you're ready. Okay. Whenever you have
Hmm.
something to say. I'm going to do my best, Ron Perlman. War never change. No, I'm kidding. I had to do it. Okay.
Couldn't save it for Fallout 4, huh?
I couldn't. Okay. War never changes. When atomic fire consumed the earth, those who survived did so in great underground vaults. When they opened, their inhabitants set out across the ruins of the old world to build new societies, establish new villages, forming tribes.
Okay.
As Okay,
Uh,
go ahead.
I just want to say that, like, what is striking to me about this, the way, because, so, one of the other things we need to keep in mind is that Fallout 3 has brought Fallout not only back into kind of like the public consciousness, but like has opened up Fallout to an entirely new demographic of people.
Hmm.
Um, and what is interesting to me about this line is how quickly and efficiently it is sort of writing over something that was really weird to me about Fallout 3, which is that there are still people, like in Fallout 3, there are sort of people who don't believe vaults exist or who sort of act like vaults are weird and rare, which is in distinction to Fallout 2, where it was kind of like a fact of life that, like, yeah, there are like entire communities made out of people who came out of vaults. Like,
Hmm.
there are literally communities built on top of old vaults. None of which is sort of present in the capital wasteland. And so we have very quickly, right? We recontextualize what the vault means in this setting and sort of the history of it. And then also the complicated topic of the tribes.
Yeah, the fact that it would be separated into societies, villages, and tribes
Hmm.
is pretty interesting. Yeah, and that's going to keep happening, right? We remarked, I think, in Fallout 3 that occasionally like the concept of the tribal showed back up. It's going to come back in full force in this game. And in fact, it's going to show up in just a second. So let me read the next paragraph here. As decades passed, what had been the American Southwest united beneath the flag of the new California Republic, dedicated to old world values of democracy and the rule of law. As the Republic grew, so did its needs. Scouts spread east, seeking territory and wealth in the dry and merciless expanse of the Mojave Desert. They returned with tales of a city untouched by the warheads that had scorched the rest of the world, and a great wall spanning the Colorado River. Anything here?
Okay. I mean, it's okay. Like the NCR, which we know from Fallout 2, is introduced in brief here, and we're told that it's expansionist, and we've got the Hoover Dam. So, I mean, this is kind of just an observation of geography. Not much to say.
The NCR mobilized its army and sent it east to occupy the Hoover Dam and restore it to working condition. But across the Colorado, another society had arisen under a different flag. A vast army of slaves forged from the conquest of 86 tribes. Caesar's Legion.
So this Caesar's Legion is a faction that was originally proposed for Van Buren. That gets so the alternative Fallout 3 that Black Isle was working on that was canceled. That gets recycled here, and I mean it's exactly what it sounds like. We've mentioned that there are these tribes that are in the west and the southwest, and this is kind of a new emergent faction that we'll learn more about as the game goes on. But the sort of important part is that they're a slave empire.
Mm-hmm. And kind of based on a kind of Roman imaginary.
Mm-hmm.
Next paragraph. 4 years have passed since the Republic held the dam, just barely, against the Legion's onslaught. The Legion did not retreat. Across the river it gathers strength, campfires burned, training drums beat. I'm going to keep going. Through it all, the New Vegas Strip has stayed open for business under the control of its mysterious overseer, Mr. House, and his army of rehabilitated tribals and police robots.
Yeah. It's something to wonder about the phrase rehabilitated tribals.
Yeah, when that came up, I was like, I don't remember this from this video game when I played it before.
I remember it, like, and we'll definitely talk about like what this means. I don't think it's necessarily a good phrasing still, but also there is, I mean, the basically right is that how like House has brought these particular tribes under his influence and control is what it means. All of the families that run the strip were originally tribes.
You are a courier hired by the Mojave Express to deliver a package to the New Vegas Strip. What seemed like a simple delivery job has taken a turn for the worse.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. This is credited to Ron, the narrator, by the way. The idea that his name is Ron and he's just like chilling out doing stuff. And so here, then we like, we're not in the game engine, right? So we're back, we're still in we are in the game engine, right?
Yeah, I think we are. And then we or something close to it. I don't know if it's pre-rendered or not, but we're back to the scene that I mentioned at the intro cinematic, right? This thing that, and this is what I talk about, the economy of this, right? Is that scene, seeing the grave being dug, could have been just, this is shady Vegas stuff, but it turns out like, oh, no, this is where the game is starting. You're the person who's bound and gagged on the ground there.
Yeah, 100%. This is the kind of, I don't think that this is shocking information. This is a kind of a common thing of when you're screenwriting or whatever, is that you want to start in media res, right? Mm-hmm. Like you want to start in the middle of the action, in the middle of the thing that's happening, and then you catch, your viewer up, in this case a player, you catch them up later as you go along, but you start in the action or within the kind of drama that's happening. Fallout 3 does not do that in any kind of way, right?
Mm-mm.
And it's interesting, I guess, also to think about Fallout 2 actually kind of does, right? Fallout 2 starts with like, hey, the village is dying. You need to go do this tutorial mission to then like go do the thing, right? To go save us. Fallout 3 is it really actually kind of starts literally at the beginning of your life and really slowly onboards you. You know, you're 40 minutes into that game, 40 minutes into that game before the like kind of core struggle really appears, right? And not the case in Fallout 2, certainly not the case here, because this Vegas mobster guy says a bunch of stuff to you and then shoots you in the head.
Yep. Our good friend Matthew Perry, says a bunch of things that we just have no context for or no way of understanding. But basically, he's just like, I'm sure you feel real bad about this, but just so you know, you never could have done anything different. And then he shoots you in the head.
The game is rigged.
The game was rigged from the start.
Yeah, the game is rigged from the start. In fact, on the official wiki, if you're curious about what that sounds like, and I probably haven't put the audio in here, it's probably very low beneath our voices, you can actually go to the fallout.fandom.com /wiki/Fallout New Vegas intro and click a little play button and have them play the sound clip for you if you want to hear Benny say that as many times as you want. But yeah, so that's the thing, and then we wake up. And we are fully in engine. We're playing the game. We're in the character creator, and there's a doctor there who is like, "Hey, you got shot in the head, buddy."
Sorry about that. Here, like, make sure you still look right.
Yeah. What is this, Dr. Good something?
Dr. Good. His name is Doc Mitchell.
Doc Mitchell. Oh, they're in Goodsprings.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Dr. Feelgood, of course.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So his name is Doc. We get this information. He's Doc Mitchell. He's like this pleasant-looking man with a mustache. And, kind of onboards us into the game by saying, hey, you had a bullet in your head. I had to dig around all throughout your face and head to get all the pieces out. So you need to make sure I made you look right. I think this is a very funny way of getting us into the character creator.
Yeah, so, I mean, I made... or actually, no, is the first thing he asks for is your name?
Yes, the first thing he says is your name, and I put in Tonk, and he said, I don't know if I would have chosen that name.
Well, he said it to me, too, and it sort of makes sense, because my character for this round is a lady named Lucky Nell. This will become a founding principle for this playthrough. Is that Lucky Nell is a courier, renowned for her excellent luck, except for apparently this one time she got shot in the head. So we'll see how her adventure shakes out and whether her luck improves or persists.
Well, was it unlucky? Because ultimately it allowed her to become the protagonist of a video game.
Yeah. I mean, this is how we emptied her subjectivity and allowed us to assume it.
Yeah, sometimes you got to go through the Swamp of Sorrows to get to wherever the hell they went at the end of that movie. Sometimes the Artax has got to go in that swamp. I'm just bringing everyone down. I'm putting that in people's heads. Artax didn't make it. Let's sit with it. But so Tonk is Tonk. Okay, Tonk has not changed. Put my, I put basically the same head shape together, same crew cut, same powerful, massive mustache as Tonk had in the Fallout 3. I don't have, I've had a pretty good logic, Vault Dweller to, savior of the village in Fallout 1 and 2. The transmutation of molecules throughout space and time to produce Tonk in Fallout 3. I think this might just be an unrelated Tonk. Who has nothing to do with the other three.
Yeah. I mean, I think that might be the same for this Eleanor. Kind of an alternate universe Eleanor. I mean, that's why she goes by Nell, right? She's lived a very different life.
This is going to be an extremely... this is a Dan Reichert style question, and I apologize for it in advance. Is Nell short for Eleanor?
It is.
Wow.
Yep.
What? Oh, when did that start? Is that a 19th century thing?
I mean, it's a like English thing, right?
Oh, okay.
Like like Nan and Nell, like those are all very like medieval, early modern English nicknames for women.
What's Nan short for?
It can be Anna.
Oh my god, this is
Hmm.
blowing my mind right now. I
Hmm.
thought for sure you're gonna be like, well, it's in the Bible, and I'd be like, oh no. Adam, Eve, and Lucky Nell, of course.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
naturally.
so this happens, and there's actually kind of a weird little like arcade, not quite an arcade machine, like a carnival machine almost that you use to assign your stats.
Yes, yes, the vigor tester.
Yeah, the vigor test. It's like one of those things where you like measure your grip or whatever, right?
Hmm.
But it evaluates your strength and your luck and all these other abilities. I don't have them right in front of me. I can give people a general idea, and of course they'll be in the footage. But where is Lucky Nell? Are her stats in the same kind of region? Where's she at?
The play style that I'm going to be doing for this playthrough, it will be probably pretty similar to what I've done in previous runs, which is to say that Lucky Nell has, I think, 3 strength, 5 perception, 4 endurance, 7 charisma, 6 intelligence, 7 agility, and this is where the big difference lies. She has 8 luck.
Mm. That's a lot. That's a lot of luck.
It is a lot of luck. In fact, when I finished character creation, Doc Mitchell said, "Wow, with luck like that, I'm surprised the bullets didn't turn back around and crawl into the gun."
Oh, so this is something that I will say. I think there's a lot more of that kind of dialogue in this game already. Even only playing, I think I played maybe an hour, for this episode that we did. A lot more kind of responsive dialogue, it feels like.
Hmm.
A lot more of contextual dialogue.
Hmm.
And that could be the case of this game is just at its beginning really good at controlling context and
Hmm.
thinking about those outcomes. So I don't know yet, but certainly feels way different from what Fallout 3 had in that territory, which was nothing.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think back in Fallout 2, when we did the switch from Fallout 1 to Fallout 2, I remember you described the difference in the writing style as like from basically like barren to lush in terms of
Mhm.
how the writing in Fallout 2 could communicate character and sort of detail because of sort of the differences of how those were being developed. But it's a very similar thing between Fallout 3 and New Vegas, weirdly enough, where it feels like even Doc Mitchell's dialogue feels like it is written in more of a voice than almost any character in Fallout 3.
100%. I actually really feel like this is not something that I had thought of as we were playing Fallout 3, but playing them kind of back to back like this, and especially actually taking a few weeks of a break and not just kind of being in Fallout thinking mode, it's really apparent to me already how much Fallout 3 is written in a fantasy mode.
Yes, yes. I'm so glad you said that. I had that exact same thought, right? Like, oh, and I'm going to have more to say about that, but yes, right. The way that characters speak about the world in Fallout 3, they talk about it as if they were characters in a fantasy setting.
Yeah, it's like all mythical, right? Like, oh,
Uh-huh.
you're a vault dweller? Wow. Like, and this by contrast is like deeply materialist, right? And I don't necessarily mean materialist in the sense that that gets used often, right? But like, there's a world of stuff and it's shuffling around, and everyone kind of just knows that. There's no mystery to the vaults. Literally, this game opens with Doc Mitchell being like, you can go into his dialogue options and just chat with him, and he'll be like, yeah, I was born in a vault, and then I left, and I was like a traveling doctor for a while, and now I'm not.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
it's just like, yes, like this is part of life. He was a traveling doctor. He has gone more than like 10 feet from the place he was born, which it didn't seem like many people in Fallout 3 had done.
Mm-mm.
Just it feels like a world already with connections and not like, and over there is a mystical place called New Vegas. At some point in here, I was talking to someone and she was like, yeah, you got to go up I-95. And
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit. Like there would never be any of that in Fallout 3, right? Because
No,
it's got to be like, out there in the wasteland.
the names of the roads were all lost. No one remembers what a highway is.
Yeah. And here they're like, I don't know, you can go up the I-95, but you can take the 14 West and then you'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's like there's literally a conversation where you can talk to a character and she gives you like regular ass directions on how to go somewhere else. And yeah, so it just feels much more kind of attached to the world. and this is I think going to come up a few more times probably, but the other thing too that kind of following up on what we started here with is that Tonk is like at 9 strength, and I'm not really sure where the other things evened out. I think I have 6 luck. I pumped that a little bit. Probably put some into endurance. But classic Tonk. Not a lot of surprises there. After that, Doc Mitchell asks you to like do like a personality test.
Yeah, one of the most I mean it's what we did kind of in Fallout 3 where you took your like little personality school test to decide your skills or whatever. But this one is incredibly opaque.
Yeah, it really feels more like, because the goat, right, from Fallout 3 is like an aptitude test. What are you going to be good at? This game is like, or this kind of test is it feels perfunctory. It feels like the developers know that no one wants to do this, that this is like not a beneficial way to actually allow you to set your skills. And it feels like it's giving us the smallest skeleton, the littlest skeleton. That's my new children's book, by the way. But gives us this little kind of structure to, like, if we've never played a Fallout game or we don't really have any sense of this, that would allow us to understand how to kind of tag our skills. But it doesn't seem like this is taking it very seriously, to the point where quite literally the last 3 questions are a Rorschach test. Like, you can't get more arbitrary than that.
Yeah.
I was able to say that one looked like something that I didn't want to talk about.
Aw. I was just like, I have no idea what any of this is doing, and I know I can do what I want at the end of it, so I'm just going to blow through it.
Yeah, I read through them, but it wasn't, kind of a little bit of a waste of time. But what'd you end up tagging?
I tagged guns, speech, and steak.
So classic Eleanor style. I went with I think this is different from Fallout 3. I don't remember now. It must be the same as Fallout 3. Anyway, I tagged repair, melee weapons, and then explosives, of course.
I think I think that's true. One thing to actually point out on mine, I only tagged guns, not small guns, because big guns and small guns get consolidated in this game. So it's only guns and energy weapons as kind of your firearms.
That's probably for the best.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's a good decision.
And then we get traits.
Yeah, then we get traits. I was going to ask you about that. So they're not quite the same. They're not the same as perks.
No, and I don't think you get the opportunity for more of these, and all of them are kind of like, all of them have kind of like a little bit of a benefit and a little bit of a drawback for the most part. And I think these are, and this is one of the things that New Vegas in particular gets kind of praised for compared to Fallout 3. It's about adding texture to your character for kind of role play or for sort of interactions with the world, right? There's one that like gives you, and you don't have to pick these is the other thing, but there's like one that gives you bonuses during the day, but then you get minuses at night. And yeah, so for instance, the traits that I took, one is you'll recall from Fallout 3 that it was established that Eleanor wears glasses. Well, that's true for Lucky Nell. So she got the trait 4 Eyes, which means that as long as I am not wearing a pair of glasses in the game, my perception is actually lower. And then I also took the Wild Wasteland trait, which is the one that adds kind of the wacky stuff to the game, right? Back in Fallout 2, we sort of talked about some of this. There were sort of random encounters that you could get where there would be like a Star Trek reference or a Monty Python. Actually, it was a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. Running into kind of these pop culture-y kind of little things in the world. Interestingly enough, Obsidian decided to make that optional, so it is a trait that you can pick, and that is the one that I took.
Yeah, I think you could I believe in the previous Fallout games they did that correlated to luck. The higher luck you had, the second one might have had it. I mean, it's interesting to see how traits kind of shake out here, right? Because traits are in Fallout 1 and 2, and then the Bethesda perk system kind of emerges out of that, right? Maybe
Mhm.
gamifying it a little bit more directly. And now we have like a combination of the two. Although, I mean, leveling up perks existed in Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, but it feels like an interesting combination of like every benefit that you could get as a character in Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 as you leveled up felt like it was, as you're saying, a kind of texture
Mhm.
device, right? A lot of them had trade-offs to them. Whereas Fallout 3, some of them had trade-offs, but for the most part, it was just like, here's a cool thing your character can do now. You can carry more, whatever, without very many drawbacks as far as that's concerned. So here we're kind of getting kind of another evolution or revolution of how these work. I only took one. I was looking for a second one to get, but yeah, as people who listen to this show and Mages and Murder Dads know, I am pretty good at like making mistakes that ruin my ability to play a game
Mhm.
and hurt me in a major way. And I'm not. I don't want to do that again. So I did take Heavy Handed, which is more damage with unarmed and melee attacks, but fewer criticals. And that
Mm.
seemed perfectly safe to me. I would rather just hit harder more often than get the occasional crit. That seems better. But that's the only one I took. As you said, you can take up to 2 or as few as 0, and I took exactly 1.
Centrist talk.
I said, I don't know which way is the best way, but it's probably right between 2 options.
Mhm.
Who can say, good or bad? A legion of slaves, or a slave-taking legion, I guess would be the more appropriate thing, or liberalism. Who could know which would be good? We're gonna find out. We're gonna make our way. Tonk is gonna make his way through this world. We do all of that, and Doc is like, "Hey, here's some supplies. You're nude. You probably don't want to be nude anymore."
Mhm.
And he gives you a vault outfit, right?
Yep. Yes, he does.
Okay, just make it.
And he
So the reason I asked that question is that I have like the Game of the Year edition or whatever, and so I started with like 1,000 things in my inventory.
Oh, yeah, so did I.
Yeah, and so I've now sold most of those things. It's a really good like buffer of money for the beginning of the game, but I was making sure that that's where that came from.
Yeah.
And then he says, "Hey, bebop on out into the world, and you can ask a little bit about the person who shot you." He suggests you go talk to the person who dragged you out of the shallow grave where you were buried in, and you can kind of like start the main quest there. So
Yeah,
pretty
and I
open when
mean,
things start.
yeah, and notably, right, how he describes the person who pulled you out of the grave is that metal fella, Victor,
Hmm.
which is a way to describe a person. And as you can ask Mitchell for more information, and it becomes clear that Victor is some sort of robot that lives in this town, which
Hmm.
is actually an interesting distinction from the original 2 Fallout games, which started you in places where you were not going to encounter things like robots for a very, very long time. And that was actually a difference that Fallout 3 had, is that in the first town you had like a little, deputy protectron out there.
Yeah, they love robots with jobs.
Uh-huh.
And cowboy is a job, I
Hmm.
would say.
Yeah, of course it is.
It's a vocation.
So he tells you, Mitchell tells you to either talk to Victor, but also talk to a lady named Sunny Smiles, who's in the saloon. A couple other things. I mean, I'm going to do the traditional Eleanor thing and try to exhaust whatever dialogue trees I can. But I learned a little bit about Goodsprings, which is that it is a tiny town and it's called Goodsprings because they have good water.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you can open the door and you can step out into the wide world. What did you think of this? Like that first view that you get of outside?
Well, the first thing I want to say really quickly, sorry, just to bounce back before we say this, is that one of the traits that you can take is called Logan's Loophole, and
Hmm.
you get benefits up to level 30 and then nothing after that. And that just, that made my whole day.
It is pretty funny.
It's great. Logan's Loophole. I don't know, just going out into the thing, I don't think I had much of an experience of it other than you can kind of see in front of you, and it looks like there's both a wasteland, but also like people running around and doing stuff. And it looks like a place where people live and have lived. I don't know. Are you fishing for something here?
Well, I mean, I caught it, right? It's what you just said, because this is, a mirror in Fallout 3 is when you step out of the vault for the first time,
Hmm.
and what you see there is like a desolate wasteland and a half-leveled subdivision and like no one, right? There's like a
Hmm.
little enclave robot that's bopping around out there somewhere. Um, but again, it's the sort of difference that Obsidian is taking with this setting versus the Fallout 3 East Coast stuff, where they want you to know the second you step out, like, yeah, here's this sort of the vista, right? But also there is a house directly in front of you, and
Hmm.
also, like, at least in my game, I assume he's probably scripted to do this. Victor himself was kind of like zipping by.
Yeah, I think he's like down a little bit, maybe on the road.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that those kind of two things, kind of going on, earlier about what we were talking about, the kind of world in Fallout 3 is waiting for you, narratively, right? Your kind of presence. But also there's this kind of vibe too. I'm glad that you're bringing up this kind of imagery here of like, terra nullius, right? This kind of a world that exists to have things done to it, right?
Hmm.
Which is part of a kind of an imaginary that goes back to the Enlightenment, right? Of a world that has not been touched until it has been touched by particular people,
Hmm.
right? This is very much the kind of narrative of colonization, the narrative of certainly the new world, right? It's
Hmm.
not shocker. It was just the world for many people, right?
Hmm.
Like people live there, but it's this particular fantasy of a place that needs to be gone, needs to be kind of tamed and controlled. This very John Lockean idea of how one transforms the world productively in front of you, and that requires that you have an imaginary that there's nothing there, right?
Hmm.
That you yourself are building things where, exactly like you're saying, this is the opposite kind of ideological or conceptual approach, which is that there's a world there and you need to figure out what your place is in it, right?
Hmm.
And you might have amnesia or whatever, but you actually already have a place in it, right? You're a courier.
Yeah.
You were doing some sort of job, and you can talk to people and learn a little bit more about that. But you're not just someone who sprung up out of the primordial ooze in a hole in the ground. You are a person with connection, and you are going to make new connections. Um, Maybe this is a place to talk about. This game has reputation in it,
Hmm.
like factional reputation.
Yeah, like the various places that you can go, very much like Fallout 2, will like those distinct places will have distinct opinions about you based on what you do there.
Do you think this makes a difference in this game so far? Because Fallout 2, I wouldn't say reputation mattered all that much. It was there and it was kind of running around, but I don't remember. Maybe someone can pull a quote from me or pull a moment or in some footage where it did matter that I'm just blanking on here. But it existed but did not have a massive impact on the game in Fallout 2. Do you think that's a thing that's gonna be important here, or I don't know. You see what I'm saying? Like, is it the thing that matters, or is it the thing that just is texture?
Oh, I mean, here it absolutely matters, but I'm speaking from having like played this game before, right? Like
Hmm.
like things will work out in New Vegas such that if your reputation with certain locations is bad, right? You can't go there and you can't do the quests there because the people don't like you.
Hmm.
Uh so there's that kind of thing going on. Uh and you start out here, Goodsprings neutral, and you don't really get a introduction to the reputation system until later on, actually.
Yeah, that's true. Something I guess too, talking about introductions. The this game is it's crunchier, I would say.
Hmm.
In the parlance of tabletop gaming, it has a lot more numbers and ways to interact with those numbers. I think Fallout 3 is pretty linear in a lot of different ways. There's damage and there's like damage resistance, and your skills interact with some things in the world, but it's not much more complex than that. This game has weapon mods. It has
Hmm.
weapon conditions and armor conditions, although that was in Fallout 3. it seems to have a lot more kind of granularity as far as what it wants you to be thinking about when you're looking at all your different kind of RPG things. And when you go into the menus, it gives you this big info dump about all of these different things. It feels a little bit different as far as like how complex it is immediately. Feels much more like a kind of traditional, CRPG kind of thing. What'd that robot say?
Well, I walked up to him and I talked to him, and Victor is a character that I love. I mean, there's something so charming about, like, I mean, one, I love the Securitron designs, right? They're like sort of
Mm-hmm.
big, bulky, like TVs with arms on like a single wheel. And when they move, they kind of rock their arms back and forth as if they're rollerblading. Um, and it's a very good kind of example of when I think Fallout is kind of firing on all cylinders. It can take kind of the 1950s like golly gee scientific future imaginary and pull that kind of aesthetic forward and then do interesting things with it. So in this case, right, we have the rollerblading TV robot with a cowboy face, and he's
Mm-hmm.
voiced by William Sadler. Did you know this?
No.
Yeah, William Sadler, probably maybe best known as Death from the Bill and Ted movies.
Weird.
Yeah. But he talks to you and he's kind of like, howdy, partner. And he says that he, heard some ruckus up on what he calls the Bone Orchard. And again, right, this is what I mean when I say that the dialogue here has character in a way that I feel like Fallout 3 often didn't, where characters would speak dialogue tended to be very expository.
Yeah.
Characters did not have idioms.
And repetitive too, right?
Mhm.
And here very much in the Fallout 2 mode of like there can be a pathway in a conversation that you go down that gives you a piece of information, and that's the only way you're going to get it.
Mhm. Yeah, and so he sort of explained that he heard, the ruckus up in the Bone Orchard. He was a little scared to go up there himself, but he waited until the fellas who were up there left, and then he came up and he pulled us out of the grave and turned us over to Doc Mitchell for some healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him a little bit about his past, and he was just like, oh, I've been here about 15 years, but I can't seem to recall before then, which is interesting. A robot who has a lack of memory. Raises some questions. And also, right, he can't really give any good reason for why he helped you other than the fact that he like thought it a good idea for some reason. He just like out
Mm-hmm.
of the goodness of his robot heart. But also he's a robot who just seems to live in this town, and that's a very strange thing.
It's just the town robot. Damn. Everybody's so critical of the town robot. Just let him live.
Yeah.
Just let him walk around with his amnesia, asking what can change the nature of a man. Come on. Uh-oh. That's the robot cops.
I'll show
Don't
you
get me.
changing the nature of a man.
I know. Jeez. Yeah, so I'm assuming you did the kind of tutorial quest here.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing to mention is that in
Mm.
your inventory is a manifest from your courier job that tells you that you were delivering an oversized platinum poker chip, which is a thing
Yeah.
that Benny flashed to you. So you saw that at the beginning. You know that this was whatever you were carrying it, but you don't know why it was important or why anyone would want it. But the manifest also tells you like the headquarters of the courier services in a town called Prim, and you have some sort of contractor boss there that you need to go see. But yeah, so I zipped over to the saloon where Sunny Smiles is, and she did the tutorial quests. She's kind of like a local sort of hunter, protector kind of person, and she has an attack dog named Cheyenne, and she teaches you. Well, she taught me how to shoot a gun by taking me out back and lining up some sarsaparilla bottles. I wanted to know how you handled this, being Tonk.
I learned how to use a gun, but I didn't want to do it.
Oh, okay. I
She
didn't
was like,
know
here,
if
use this gun. And I was like, bang, 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 bang. Yeah, I know how guns work. And I immediately ripped it apart with my bare hands.
Okay. I didn't know if you could like go up and like punch them, if that would count.
I thought about doing it. I really did. But then, but she hands you the gun and it automatically equips. And in a moment of pure laziness, I thought, I'm going to have to go into the menu and equip a melee weapon. Or I could just do this. And I just did it. I have the same question. I'm not going to go back and do it. unfortunately. Someone else test it out. You let us know if you can punch them.
Yeah. So yeah, she teaches you to shoot, and then she's like, "Well, you want to come off and help me on my rounds? There's some geckos out here." She's primarily a gecko hunter. We've got the return of the gecko, the famous gecko of Fallout 2 and Ranged Touch general fame.
Mm-hmm.
And
Scarier, way
yes,
scarier in this game.
yeah, a lot. Well, I mean, they're still kind of weirdly adorable in their body language, but the experience of these things coming at you in a first person perspective is rather different from seeing it in the isometric one.
And then they scream. They're like, "Wah!"
Yeah.
Way scarier, just in a broad general sense. Something interesting about them is that so I'm trying to the best of my ability to play this whole game in third person mode in the way that I played the last little bit of Fallout 3 in third person mode, and it's pretty interesting to be whacking my machete around and hitting these things with it. I guess the weapons I have in my inventory that are melee weapons are from the game of the year like packs that are involved, and so I'm just annihilating everything.
Yeah.
Like chopping them apart. It does seem like melee weapons cause dismemberment in this game, whereas they didn't always do that in the in Fallout 3, and so I will say that Tonk's playthrough is pretty graphic as far as what he's doing to human beings and geckos and everything in between.
Well, so is Nell's actually. The thing about Lucky Nell is that she has a very high luck skill, and so she gets crits a lot. And this means that there are gecko heads flying into the sky. And it's wild because neither of us has like the bloody mess perk. I don't actually even remember if that perk is still in this game.
It's not, as far as I know.
Okay.
I didn't see it at the beginning. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, like they're just like, yeah, no, everything's a bloody mess now. But yeah, so you kill some geckos, and then she's like, I'm gonna teach you the crafting system now. I mean, she doesn't say that. She's like, go get some stuff, and I'll teach you how to make like a healing powder. So that's another thing from Fallout 2 that kind of fell out, right? Is that there were alternative methods of healing yourself aside from like food and stim packs. She tells you what to get, and you can go back up to the town. There's like some stuff outside Goodsprings schoolhouse. And then there's other stuff up on the graveyard where you can see where you were buried, and you can look down over kind of the basin or whatever that's in front of you and see New Vegas in the distance, which is a cool view.
It's absolutely great, and it's great just because it's a cool view, as you're saying, but also because it kind of sells it sells the gameplay experience of the cutscene that we saw before, where you could see it was nighttime and you could see New Vegas in the background behind Benny, right? It kind of aligns all of these things, and it would be easy to not do that, but it's really clear that they were like, yeah, you gotta, it in a lot of ways, you see that mountain, you can go there, but way better, right? Because you can see New Vegas, you are going to go there. And not only are you going to go there, you are here because of that thing, right?
Right.
It just kind of makes this whole kind of narrative universe geographically coherent in a really cool way. So I really thought it was cool.
Yeah, there's like, critters around here. There's like mantises that are back. No roaches in the Southwest, I guess. But then there are bloat flies. Then on my way back, I encountered my first wild wasteland thing, which was a overturned refrigerator with a corpse inside of it, wearing a fedora, because it was 2010 and we were still angry over Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, for children who were not alive at the time, because you reasonably can be listening to this and not be aware of it. There is a moment in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull in which a nuclear weapon explodes, and Indiana Jones, in his infinite wisdom, gets inside of a 1950s refrigerator and is flung like a long way and survives from having done that. And it was a moment of nerd displeasure. People
Yeah, and
hated
that's
it.
not to say that I think it's necessarily good. I do think it's like a stupid moment that is weirdly cartoonish, but also I am not going to, post the 1,000 word internet comments that were prolific about this thing, right?
Hmm.
This was, I don't know, it's weirdly quaint, right? To think that this is how nerds used to get angry on the internet.
Yeah, kind of, right? I mean, quaint in the sense of like it was like the phoenix egg about to emerge,
Uh-huh.
but in the smoldering flame. But yeah, so that's interesting, I guess. No, so here's a question for you about the Wild and Wacky Wasteland. Are there certain things that are tagged to certain areas that you're going to see, or are they totally kind of random in the same way that they were in Fallout 1 and 2? Do you know?
I don't have an exhaustive knowledge of all the things that the trait unlocks, but I know that I think, for instance, in this case, if you went to the area in your game where I found this, you would also find a like broken refrigerator, but it maybe wouldn't have a corpse in it, but it might have some other loot, right?
Gotcha.
Uh,
Okay.
it's sort of the specific arrangement of things, and I'll talk about that actually with the next. Weirdly enough, you get two of these in pretty close succession. So I go back to Sunny. She teaches me how to make healing powder. That's great. And then I go walking back, and I see this guy kind of wandering ahead of me. His name is Barton Thorne, which is a pretty badass name for an NPC who is going to appear and disappear in very short order.
Hmm.
But he tells me like, "Oh, my girl's up on the ridge, trapped by geckos or whatever. Can you go up and help her?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." And I go up there, and there's like a nest of geckos, like it just murdering all these geckos. There's so many. It's the most enemies you have ever encountered in the game up until this point, and these geckos are just like leaping at you. So I open up my inventory. Lucky Nell's luck strikes, and she pulls out her special like silver shotgun that she got with her weapon pack, and is just like obliterating these geckos. Then you go further up, and then you find like a sort of like half-eaten corpse. There's no girl, right? No girl that you can find.
Uh-oh.
Uh, and then there's like a whole bunch of loot. And then as you sort of continue up this ridge, you will find a chair and a table. And normally this chair is supposed to have a corpse sitting in it, but strangely enough, the corpse had fallen out in my game and disappeared. But for my game, what this corpse would have been had he actually spawned in correctly would have been Johnny Five Aces, the famous protagonist from the steampunk time travel game Zyborn Clock, that never got made. It was like a project, a speculative project on the forums for the website Something Awful.
Yeah.
The people who used the forums were called goons, and I mean, anyone who's listening to this probably knows what social media is, but imagine that in like a more insular fashion. A whole bunch of
Hmm.
people who really like specific types of like speculative fiction, fantasy, and video games, deciding they're going to make their own time travel steampunk game that mostly is just like them drawing all of the concept art for things that they think are cool, and then the project completely implodes, and it becomes a sort of meme or in joke for the forums for years to come. And Josh Sawyer, the director on this game, was active on the Something Awful forums, so that's where that comes from.
I will put the iconic Johnny Five Aces image, uh, like crayon drawing, up on the screen so people
Thank
can
you.
see it.
And here, I mean, if again, children listening who were not who were not of posting age during the heyday of Something Awful, I will read to you the from the kind of I use this very very loosely, the sort of like pitch document from the thread that explains how time travel works. When the object enters the time stream, time begins to correct itself. Let me use this example. Imagine four balls on the edge of a cliff. Say a direct copy of the ball nearest the cliff is sent to the back of the line of balls and takes the place of the first ball. The formerly first ball becomes the second becomes the third, and the fourth falls off the cliff. Time works the same way. So that is that is famous Zyborn clock meme text. I don't know. And also like next to what would have been this corpse had it spawned, you can like they actually have like the balls lined up at the edge of the little cliff. And then I hopped down and I tried to find Barton Thorne to finish up this quest, and he had disappeared. Presumably he was killed by a rad scorpion or a gecko or something, and I never found his corpse.
It's a simulation, okay? It's not a game. There's kind of one major quest. After you can run around, you can talk to a lot of different people here. You can get a lot of information. I wouldn't say you're really learning more information than is in the intro thing. I mean, you've learned that the big kind of major factions that exist in the world are the NCR and the Legion. A prospector named Pete says Caesar, Khazar. I don't know which one it is, and that I don't know if that was a Josh Sawyerism, but that feels like a well, did you know that Caesar and Kaiser and Czar are all related? That's not my Josh Sawyer impression, but it's a little bit of this kind of like, ho ho ho. If you know, then you know. But yeah, so you can kind of run around, and it puts us in a like side quest here, where we find out that there is a guy on the run.
Yeah, if you go into the saloon, you'll find a guy named Joe Cobb yelling at the saloon proprietor, who's this woman named Trudy. He's demanding, someone he needs to, get his hands on some guy or something, and she's not being very cooperative. And he's basically making threats that, if they don't do what he wants, he's going to come back with a bunch of his men, and they're going to do something awful to the town. And then you can talk to Trudy about it, and it turns out that there was this trader named Ringo who came into town a few days, like the week before or something, and he'd been his caravan had been ambushed, and he'd been attacked, and he needed to lie low. And because it turns out there's a gang operating kind of to the, I think, south of Goodsprings. They're called the Powder Gangers, and they're former, well, I guess technically still they are escaped convicts from the NCR, because as the NCR has been expanding into this area, they've needed to like clear out roads and do construction and things like that, and so they have essentially formed chain gangs. And some of these guys have escaped, and now they are living out in the wasteland with all of their explosives.
Yeah, that's why I was asking kind of at the beginning about the relationship between NCR and Vault City, right? Because Vault City has, or Vault City in the previous Fallout games, right, has slavery in them, right? And so I'm assuming that NCR has to have absorbed Vault City, right?
I mean, I think that is the case, right? I think Vault City has been annexed by NCR, but I also think NCR is the type of place that would have like abolished the weird the weird system of slavery that Vault City had, that was not called slavery but was kind of like a weird it was an extreme form of indentured servitude that in theory granted people citizenship.
Yes, right. Had the possibility of doing so.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like, I'm just kind of skimming the Fallout wiki here, and it looks like that's a part of the kind of trajectory here. Yeah, but yeah, so they're running around with explosives, just kind of doing whatever the hell they want. It seems, and you gotta help this guy out. This is very much a Western, kind of thing.
And that's another thing about this, actually, about New Vegas, that it sort of resumes, is pulling on all of kind of the Western influence that you saw in 1 and 2. So you go up to the gas station, and he, basically tells you the story that you've already heard, and you're like, okay, I can help you. Or you could tell him no, right? Not my problem. He's like, well, we need help, and he recommends you talk to Sunny. Sunny's all in for it, but she's like, we also probably need more help, so you can ask other people around the town. You can ask Trudy. She'll help. And then they recommend that you ask Easy Pete, who has, I think, some dynamite of his own, and Chet, who is the proprietor of the general store.
Well, I really like the design of this, because each of these people has like a skill check you have to go through in order to convince them. Right. So like Trudy has a speech check, and Chet has like a barter check, and Pete has an explosives check, right? And so
Hmm.
I had enough explosives or skill to be like, I know how to handle dynamite, Pete. You can give me that dynamite. It'll be okay. And he's like, all right, fine. But no one else would support me. And they were like, yeah, this seems like a waste of money, and it doesn't seem like the powder gangers are, I don't think you can do it. So it's this really kind of cool moment of like, can you bring the gang together? And I really like that the game can be like, no, you can't.
Yeah.
Like, good luck,
Yeah.
buddy.
I mean, and that's the thing also, right? Is that it is so unlikely that you would have kind of the necessary, at this point in the game, that you would have the necessary skills to get everyone on board. So, like, I didn't get Chet, I didn't get Easy Pete. You can ask Victor, and Victor will, like, agree to help you, but then he won't show up.
Oh.
Yeah. And then after kind of your confrontation with the powder gangers, you can find him, and when you talk to him, the first thing he says is like, hey man, when are those outlaws showing up? When are we gonna fight them? And you can be like, it already happened, where were you? And he's like, that's weird, I feel like I went to sleep or something. So again, right, sort of signals that Victor is not in total, he's either not telling us things or he is not in total like conscious control of himself. But yeah,
Just hates outlaws.
How did this confrontation with the powder gangers go for you?
Well, so I before I say this, I want to say something about the powder gangers.
Okay.
Most of them are in like their like jumpsuits, right? I mean, they're convicts. They're wearing clothes that would be, they're not shocking. It's like a full length jumpsuit. Some of them have a little bit of raider armor on that. Some of them have whatever. One of them is a fully nude man in a cowboy hat.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just got a gun and he's doing it. Like, he's just fighting the good fight. And when I saw that, I lost my mind. Like, there's something so funny to me about, like, all these people who are in basically uniform. I mean, not basically, a uniform, right? That clearly delineates them as powder gangers. And then a nude man in a cowboy hat who is also, he's just like, yeah, I'm a powder ganger. I don't wear the clothes. I do what I want. I'm my own man now. I love it. I absolutely love it. But, well, so what happened first is I was like, oh yeah, cool. I got this dynamite. I'm going to use it. And as soon as the conflict began, I began throwing my dynamite and I blew up Cheyenne's dog. Or no, Cheyenne is the dog.
Yeah.
I blew up that dog immediately, and I felt so bad about it that I reloaded my save.
Oh no.
I didn't want to blow up the dog. That seemed bad. And so then I decided, oh, I guess I'll just have to wait in here with a machete, and went into vats and just like go into town on all the powder gangers. Every time I'm killing one of them, it's like, your reputation with the powder gangers has gone down. Your reputation with the powder gangers has gone down. You are now infamous with the powder gangers for slicing them all up, Michael Myers style, with a machete. And I was like, you know what? That's fair. Like,
Yeah.
that's perfectly. I will accept that would probably make you infamous.
Right. Well, and this is the thing about this game, is that there are usually let's say usually mirrored quests, especially when factions are concerned. So you could have, if you wanted to, run out of Goodsprings down to where the powder gangers are hiding out, talked to them, and then agreed to help them take over Goodsprings.
Whoa! What?
So yeah, then you're it would have been the opposite situation where you're going through everyone in Goodsprings, macheting them down, and then your reputation is slowly degrading with them. But the powder gangers would love you. And so in this case, right, we both kind of did the same thing. We both got on the good side of Goodsprings, and Lucky Nell, her number came up again. She had a grenade launcher in her inventory. And so she just like blew all the powder gangers up with that. Unfortunately, Ringo did not have very good luck because he died in this confrontation.
We were supposed to be backing Ringo up.
Yeah, and he just I had to rewatch my footage because I was like, oh no, did I blow him up with my grenade gun? And no, he just like died on his own.
Had nothing to do with the grenade gun.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God I'm free from sin, she said, holding up her grenade gun. Interesting. Well, yeah, that's all we did for this episode. We kind of got through it. big thoughts, big ideas here. Anything we haven't covered so far?
No, I mean, I feel like this has been pretty thorough. Well, I mean, almost anything that I want to say right now could be said in the next episode as we continue on. We know we need to get to Prim, and as you said, you can talk to people, ask them about, do you know it? You can ask everyone. Do you know anything about the people who shot me? And one of the things that is actually nice about to complement the writing of this game again, and sort of calling back to what we described as sort of the repetitiveness of Fallout 3's dialogue. If this were a Fallout 3 quest, everybody would have said a variation on the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here in Goodsprings, there are basically like three things that people will say about the people who, attacked you. They'll mention that they're probably from New Vegas. They'll mention that some of them look like they're raiders. And there's like a third detail. I can't remember what it is, but it has maybe something to do with, the danger of them or something. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
basically, each person in town you can talk to about this will own like they'll have variations, but they'll tell you like two of the details, right? And each person kind of has two of the different details. So even if you're getting the same information, it feels like it's coming from a different person with a different sort of perspective on the situation you're asking them about, and it does so much to make this like feel like a more plausible world.
Yeah, I mean, you feel rewarded for talking to two people about the same thing. Whereas
Mhm.
Fallout 3, that is not the case. I can't think of any time where I talked to two different individuals about the same thing, unless they were diametrically opposed to each other, via a quest, where I got really qualitatively different information. And so, yeah, you feel like, oh, I can talk to a few different people and like kind of put together what's going on. What's pretty cool about Goodsprings too is that you can talk to people and just kind of ask them general questions, and they will start putting places on your map for you. And
Right.
just being like, hey, this is where, XYZ place is. I've heard about this place over here. And you can start kind of populating the world a little bit where it's not like you need to go to the quest marker immediately. It's here's like a little bit of a locale, and you might find some interesting stuff over there. Prim being obviously the thing that the main quest is kind of pushing you toward. But, it kind of feels like if you were interested in knowing about where some big major landmarks are that you could go explore, it's not just the case of like go to that little like, triangle on your map and discover the new place. And it's a wild and wacky world. I mean, for you, I guess it's wild and wacky. But, it's like, I know that I'm going to, this small town, or I know that this is where the powder gangers are. I don't know. It has a qualitatively different kind of vibe to it, I think.
Mhm.
It's anti-mythical in that way,
Yes.
right? They're like,
Yes.
I've been there. I've been to the schoolhouse. It's over there.
Yeah.
There's stuff there.
Mhm.
As opposed to like, I don't know. Once there was a thing called a roller coaster.
Right. I mean, so the NCR and Caesar's Legion first faced off over the Hoover Dam 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas in sort of the mythical mode of Fallout 3, literally nothing has really happened for 100, 200 years. Or like that's this, and this is, to the point about it being, fantasy, like that is fantasy time scales, right? Like the empire that lasts for a millennium or something. And it shows, I think how much I think Bethesda really is more at home in that mode.
Yeah, I think so. 100%. The other thing, we haven't said this yet, but I want to make sure that we kind of throw it in here. I don't have it in front of me for some reason. This game takes place 4 years after Fallout 3.
Mm-hmm. So
It's
yeah.
like it's across the country, but canonically kind of in the thing. It's about, I think, 150 years after Fallout 1
Mm-hmm.
and about 4 years after Fallout 3.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, weirdly enough, the like Fallout 3 happens at the same time that Caesar's Legion and the NCR are facing off over the Hoover Dam.
Mm-hmm. Wonder why.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It feels like like the parallel like plot developments on either side of the continent.
Yeah, I don't know. But, just to give people an idea about that. So I think that means we're about 50 years after Fallout 2.
Something
I don't-
like that.
I don't remember, but somewhere in that region. People can correct us on the exact timeline there. I had it in front of me and now I don't. Okay, cool. Well, next episode, Michael, what are we doing?
Next episode, we will be moving on to Prim, and we're going to, continue on the path of trying to figure out who shot us and why. And from Prim, we will have a couple of places that we're going to go, some more people that we're going to meet. Where we will not be going is to New Vegas, because there are a whole lot of really mean monsters up that way. If you go up to New Vegas at this point in the game, you will get obliterated. And in fact, Victor will come down and try to save you if you do that.
Really?
Yes. If you go, and as you're going right toward New Vegas, there are all these like stop signs that have been collected for people, like to warn people, right, that there are stronger critters up this way. Don't travel this road. And like I was walking down it just to see what would happen, and then I turned around and Victor was like skating up behind me, and he stops and he tells you, he's like, "Hey man, you shouldn't be doing this."
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
For people who would like a broad schematic of how we're playing this game, unfortunately, because of the interconnectedness of the quests and how weird like all the kind of in-game content is for New Vegas, we don't have a broad schematic beyond episode to episode. So we're going to try to signal for you at the end of episodes as much as possible what we're going to be doing the next time. But eventually, this game kind of fragments out enough where that's not nearly as possible as it was before. So we're going to keep you as updated as we can, but it's going to be a little bit different than Fallouts 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on twitter.com @WarrenIsDead.
You can go to patreon.com/rangetouch in order to support the show. For $3 a month, you can get access to an RSS feed if you want to listen to this as a podcast, if that's the way that you would rather listen to it other than YouTube. We are currently on the road to a monetary amount of $4,500 a month for Range Touch. At the point that we get there, we will begin immediately a podcast where we read through and talk about, for hours at a time, Homestuck. So if you have enjoyed this show as kind of a deep dive into Fallout's past, kind of a blow-by-blow, walking through it, getting into it, I know a lot of people listen to the show who don't even play Fallout. They just like listening to us walk through it and think about it and talk about it. You could be experiencing the same thing, but for Homestuck, which I'm told, I don't know anything about it, but I'm told it's much weirder than Fallout.
And if you, for instance, to point back at Zyborn Clock, if you like really nonsensical descriptions of time travel and us talking about that, boy, are you gonna love Homestuck.
Wow, great. So if you are interested in that, you can go and support us for as little as $1 a month. That would really help us out. Keeps our shows going, pays for hosting, pays for art and cool stuff like that. You can also go listen to any of our other cool shows that we do. You can listen to Mages and Murder Dads at youtube.com/rangetouch. You're probably checking this out, but it's where Danny and I we're playing through Disco Elysium right now. We're about halfway through that game, very similar to this show. And you can listen to Just King Things, where Michael and I are going through the collected works of Stephen King in publication order. You can also check out Game Studies Study Buddies, where we talk about academic works of game studies and check them out and walk through them if you're interested in game studies. So lots of cool stuff going on here at the Range Touch Network. And if you enjoy any of that stuff or you like listening to it, hey, maybe think about kicking us $1 a month. That would really help us out and help us get to that next goal. The power is in your hands. That's my new catchphrase. The power is in your hands.
Remember, partner, the power is in your hands.
Oh, Cowboy Michael again. Cowboy Michael, what do you think about fracking?
Fracking? I fracking love it.
Oh, God, no, Cowboy Michael, no. No, Cowboy Michael. How do you feel about poetry?
Well, I like to talk about, Canadian narrative poetry, mostly from the Yukon.
Oh, wow. Cowboy Michael contains multitudes.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, next episode's coming out in 2 weeks. We will be talking about Prim and some other side questy stuff. We will see you later. Michael, you want to take us out?
Oh, that's right, partner. War never changes, but Fallout sure does.
Everything changed.